Good morning again, and I just want to say what a joy it is to celebrate this Mass with you, and I just want to acknowledge how happy I am that I have some of our faithful daily Mass parishioners here with us today for Mass. And I should also note, back at home, we have many of our homebound parishioners who are joining us here as they do every day, and it's a great privilege to pray with all of you. I remember when I was in seminary, I was at a Bible study once, and we were looking at the first book of Kings, this very verse that we heard in our first reading. And I remember sitting there, we were in a circle, and the leader was going through line by line, commenting on things. And I remember as we were listening to this passage, which we just heard, there was a woman in the group, and as the story went along, it was clear how deeply she was entering into the story. And then when they got to the part about Solomon turning his heart away, I remember the look on her face. It was a look of shock and sadness. That moment really gave me pause. And I think the important thing for us is, when we read these stories that are in sacred scripture, we need to enter into them and then hear them again and really live them. Now, sure, we know how they live, but the sadness of Solomon turning away should really sting our hearts in a little way. When we look back, it's easy to have 20/20 vision. Hindsight is a lot better. But for ourselves, we have little falls like Solomon too. So we need to be quick to open our eyes to God and to hear the words that He has for us so that we can really follow God with our whole hearts. And all of this comes back to prayer, because prayer is how we reach out and touch God's heart. This is what we saw in today's gospel. The Syro-Phoenician woman reached out to touch Jesus' heart. She prayed with confidence, she prayed with devotion, she prayed with faith, she prayed with perseverance, and because she was able to reach out and touch God's heart, she got what she wanted. There's a joke, I think I've told it here before. I've certainly told it in the parish, but I've only got a few jokes that people laugh at, so I try to retell them as often as I can. There was a little boy who was at home. He lived with his parents, obviously, and his grandmother lived with them. And one night he knelt down beside his bed to say his night prayers. His parents were standing behind him, and then behind all of them in the doorway was the grandmother. And this is how he prayed. He folded his hands, he kneeled down, he looked up to God, and he said, "Dear God, I thank you for Mommy, and I thank you for Daddy. I thank you for the roof that's over our head and the floor, which is beneath our feet, and all of the good things that we have." And then he paused. He looked back at his grandmother in the doorway, and he smiled. And he looked back up to God, and at the top of his lungs he yelled, "And God, just so you know, I want a bicycle for my birthday." And then his mother patted him on the head and said, There, you don't need to yell. God is not deaf." And the boy with a big smile said, "I know, but Grandma is." Now, prayer, we reach out and we touch God. Now, God doesn't care so much about the volume of our voices, but the volume of love which is in our hearts. So when we turn to God with confidence, faith, and devotion, let us turn to Him with great love, that we may receive what we need so that we can be built up and persevere in His love.